Morning, Jack.
Bonjour.
You are early.
I'm I just felt like getting up.
Awesome. And how are you this week?
It's been a good week.
Well, it's good to hear. Not
Next
often people lead with that.
next Sunday, we're going to the San Diego Zoo with the Kaminskis.
Ah, awesome. So you go flying with him, you're going to the zoo with him. You guys are getting pretty chummy.
Well, he lives within a few miles of the zoo, and of course I live about 40 miles from the zoo. So uh, we head out on I-15 and drive over to the zoo. We've already been there a couple times this year, and we'll probably go again.
Let's see. I think you're talking about the San Diego Zoo.
Yes,
Yeah, that's you guys in San Diego have awesome
that's the whole point. This.
wildlife center. You've got the San Diego Zoo. You got the more entertainment-ish. I think the place that has a killer whale, right? The orca.
Yeah, it's SeaWorld, and you've got you, but so you've got basically the inland bay of San Diego
Mhm.
is home to a shitload of Navy ships,
Yep.
and of course the Midway, which is decommissioned and anchored to the dock, and you can pay $30 and go on it and walk all over it, and hang out under F-15s and S-3s and whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, turn that off for just a minute.
Turn what?
Oh, it's being recorded. Never mind.
Yeah, there's let's see. Right. Uh did I ever tell you my experience with the US Navy?
No clue.
I'd like to hear your story, but if you don't want to finish it until later, I'll tell you my story. When I was finishing college and I was trying to figure out, okay, so what do I want to do with my life? I got a math degree. What can you do with a math degree? So I actually, hey Eric, so I actually considered the Navy's nuclear power program, you know, where you
Yeah.
actually learn about nuclear reactors and you go and take care of them and eventually get assigned to a nuclear submarine and you have to make sure that it runs. So I applied for that. And, this whole application process is just like recruiting. You have to go through a physical, you have to go through these tests, whatever. And the physical was just as embarrassing and just as, common as you would hear from all these stories.
Yep.
But the test, they administered the test. And at least the office I went to, which was a San Jose office, they said I scored too high. They said that there was this one question that nobody ever got right. They got right. Sorry, there's too many things calling in right now. What's going on here? Sorry, let me get rid of this phone. Sorry. So anyway, they actually accelerated me through this application process. And one of the very last steps, it turns out, was to fly me to Washington, D.C. to meet Admiral Rickover, who was head of the nuclear power submarine
Well,
program.
that's going right up there. Yes.
He at that time had to interview every person for the Dolphin nuclear power program. But anyway,
Right.
before I got there, they were wooing and trying to get me to do this and that and the other thing. So they put on heavy full court press. And one of their Navy pilots actually, said, "Hey, let's just go flying one day." So he took me up at a Cessna and we flew around the bay. They also sent me down to San Diego to visit the whole Navy base there. and had me walk through a nuclear power submarine. And of
Yep.
course, they had to cover all the consoles, which I classified,
Right.
dials and gauges and displays and stuff like that. So that was a pretty much full court press. And after I came back from Washington, only then did they tell me, well, we'd like to have you in the program, but because of your eyes, you can't go, deploy on an actual boat. But we'd like you to learn all this material and then teach in the school. And I said, the whole point to joining the Navy is so I can actually go overseas and be on a submarine and, experience that whole thing. And
And they wanted you to teach at NPS.
sorry, what did you say?
They wanted you to teach at NPS, Naval Postgraduate School.
Something like that. And at that time, I thought, no, that takes all the whole fun out of joining the Navy. I don't want to join the Navy just to sit behind a desk. Although right now I kind of reconsider that decision. But at the time, I thought, why go into the Navy if you can't see the
Yeah,
world?
except that now today you'd have all that VA health care and
Exactly.
it would
And not only that, you could retire after 20 years.
that's exactly the point.
Yeah. I would have like probably two, maybe three full careers behind me at this point? Yeah, so I do reconsider that from time to time. But yeah, I was really interested in learning nuclear power. You know why I actually failed the interview though, even though they said I could get join the program? I think I actually failed the program because Rickover asked me one question. He said, "Why do you want to be in the nuclear power program?" And I said, "Well, I want to know about nuclear propulsion so that eventually I can help, the space program and, go explore other places." And he was very quick and said, "Well, then you should join NASA," something like that. So
Right.
that's a quick response to that.
No, you jerked his cord there.
Yeah, yeah. I was kind of dumb and stupid and hadn't been, thinking about exactly how to interview. I was a dumb college kid. So
Well, I wanted to go into either the Navy or the Air Force I had a fantasy of flying F-4s off of aircraft carriers. This was in the days of Nam, and and I thought that would be cool, except that it turned out I'm 4F.
what
And
is 4F?
4F was the draft categorization. You're not old enough for this. The draft categorization. And before your time, every kid that reached about age 16 had to go and register for the
I was
draft.
a couple of years after that, I think.
Yes, you came just after that.
Yeah.
And I filled out the form and it said, do you have any medical conditions? And I said, I don't know. And I asked my mom, do I have any medical conditions? She says, yeah, you only have one eye. And so I put that on the form. And so then the Navy said, we want to hear from your ophthalmologist. So I went into an ophthalmologist and that was at exactly the same time I was getting a pilot's license.
So you could fly, but you couldn't join the Navy.
Exactly. And so he said, "Do you want your flying pilot's license, but you don't want to go in the military?" And I said, "Pretty much." So he told the Navy that there was no way I could I couldn't perform, and he
Oh
told
man, you could have been Top Gun, Jack.
well, actually, as far as I'm concerned, I was close to Top Gun because I was really pretty damn good at flying.
But
Uh,
do you play volleyball? That's the real question.
I can play volleyball and badminton and uh, uh, table tennis,
Yeah.
etc.
So actually, so you were rejected based on the same reason I was rejected, right? My eyes. They said my eyes were not
Exactly.
good enough, so they wouldn't take me. Everything else they said was fine.
Yep.
And now I could have been like 25 years retired by now.
So I'd like to
Uh,
say that my best managers have been veterans. with their military experience, they applied it to the business world and to their teams,
Mhm.
and they led through tough
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
So there's some value there.
I do
There-
think so. Yeah.
Not for everybody, but yes.
Mhm. Yeah, there's something
Well,
about that discipline, I think.
the flip side of that is there are too many people in the commercial world who have not had real leadership or even management, quote unquote, even though I hate that word, or even leadership, training or mentorship or guidance. And they're just stuck there because, oh, well, you're the best programmer, so let's promote you. Which is such a stupid thing to do to people, It is so stupid.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I know when I
we're
got
just catching
promoted,
up.
I had problems. Yeah, I was better technically than uh, yeah, managing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, Shawn, we're just sharing stories about why I got rejected from the Navy, and it turns out Jack got rejected from the Navy, and both of us got rejected because of bad eyes.
Oh God,
Because
seriously,
Jack is
yeah.
missing one, and mine are just both blurry.
No, I don't know.
Ay, 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 ay. Well, hey, just a quick preamble. I did notice, Jack, you probably saw it. Uh, I I don't get much engagement the few times I actually send emails to OGM. But at least I did say, hey, if you want to talk about this topic, here's the link, and we talk on Saturdays and Sundays. So there's a small 0.5% chance that somebody might actually join, but I doubt it. But we'll see. I just want you guys to be prepared in case that happens.
Well, it's technically it expands your base, except that OGM is not populated with people who really give a shit about anything but talking.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. And they don't actually respond to my points.
No, they don't, and some of them are fundamentally self-centered and argumentative, and and to me, it's fun to bait them,
Hmm. I don't know
not
them as
debate,
well. I
but
just
bait.
thought that,
Yeah. Now, I prefer smaller meetings where people have more time to participate. I was at the Thursday meeting, and yeah, I just can't jump in when, like there's 10 different people trying
Yeah,
to.
the Thursday meeting ostensibly was about collective intelligence, but it really wasn't. It just was all over the map.
hmm.
I think it would be entertaining to try to plot out uh what the different numbers of participants, what the different arities of conversation uh are able to do, or what they're optimized for. It really is my belief that a one-on-one mind meld does something that no other combination can do, and that is permit a true knitting of the private mental models of the participants. Um, that when you have a third party, then well, they need to have a voice too. Right, there's this throwing in a question, and God only knows whether that question is going to cause the trajectory of the handshaking that is going on between a two-party conjugation yeah, into just chaos.
Zoom has breakout rooms, and when you get a meeting with 40 people, that's really 10 breakout rooms, except that the automatic device that Sam is running now and Jerry sometimes runs um, doesn't take care of breakout rooms.
Yeah, I can't follow them all.
It can't follow them all. And
Neither
if
can the recording itself, as far as I understand.
Yeah.
and and so that's but I have found that when somebody had a breakout room and I ended landed when in a room of people I didn't know, that was the most interesting.
It's hard to bring those back to the larger group, though. Am
That
I
is the
right?
other point.
Yeah.
Theoretically speaking, the breakout rooms would be like world cafes, and somebody in the breakout room would be the person who was chosen to stand up for the breakout room, but
Mhm.
it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, if each of those breakouts could also have its running transcript and then be
That's what I'm saying. That's
included, you know.
exactly. Now, see, if we could figure out how to add that feature to Jitsi, we would have the World Cafe online. We could do it.
So Jack, that's precisely what I'm doing in the potency, the Thinker Toys potency that I'm calling well, give me a straw poll, guys. Uh, how do you feel about the name Hyper Video, where the buzz phrase is from talking through thinking to action? So that buzz phrase from talking through thinking to action. And there are two candidate names at this point, hypervideo or convernation. Go
Two
for it.
responses from me, if I
Yeah,
may.
yeah,
One, for me at least personally, I think the word hyper is a bit too ubiquitous.
Yeah.
totally. Well,
And
and kind of 90s, yeah,
yeah, I didn't want to say that, but I almost said 290s.
totally, totally. Yeah, yeah.
The second notion is I actually don't see the sequence that way. I don't see it conversation, thinking, and then action. I see conversation and thinking in parallel, and then action occasionally dropping out of it. Okay. But it's not like 2 feet into one and whatever. So it's always
That,
like, you can't
that,
just talk and you can't just think. You got to do those both in parallel.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's why this hyper video or conversation technology. What is conversation or what is hyper video? It's video interactions like Zoomy sorts of things or this, but it's also a pan media collaboration among the participants in real time alongside the video. And in fact, also this business about, hey, what if one of you, Sam, what if you want to pipe in right now, but you don't want to interrupt me? Well, what if I could keep talking and you could immediately, like right now, start recording a response to a thing that I've got a head of steam. I'm going to talk for 5 minutes and you can see it, right? But you want to respond to something right now and get a point in. Well, hyper video lets you do that, lets you start your own breakout room, all right? Or, right, and there's in effect a graphical, there's a deep knowledge graph underneath our collaboration, and that knowledge graph can be visualized and interacted with in diverse in pan media ways. So is that a connectionist mind map sort of thing? Is it beyond that a graph of the connectivity of the themes and threads? Is another view kind of a graph of the interests or a Venn diagram even of the interests of the participants in the call? You see what I'm saying? That there's all these different views of the growing cognitive artifact that isn't latent, isn't in space, it's in the cloud, it's in the merged mental model. You take my point?
I got too much to say, but I know that Jack and Eric do as well. So I got plenty to say on that one, but I'll shut up for now.
So that's why from talking through thinking, where thinking is pointing at this collective cognitive undertaking, okay? And then to action. And why do I say that? Well, because there's tooling in there for, basically for the whole OODA loop, for the whole Boyd loop. Over.
So I would like to see Doug Engelbert's concept of use specs extended to audio and video. And we have a little bit of that in Zoom. I could choose a gallery view, speaker view, chats, and mix it on my screen. But what was amazing about Engelbart, with 5 fingers, he could choose 31 different options for his view specs. So there's something to that, where each person can personalize their interface, and that's what Star Trek does. Like all the consoles are personalized to each person on the bridge, the way they want it. Yeah, go
And
ahead.
with 2 gestures and 5 fingers,
Mhm.
you can do 1,000. Okay. This is
Oh, 31 squared. What's that? Oh, yeah, 32 squared.
10th.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and they were simple mnemonic things, and it required training, sure. But if you're building a system that's the goal is to improve productivity or whatever you're trying, I don't know what your goals are, but yeah, if people are willing to be trained in that system, then you can push the limits further. Um, okay, so let's see some other thoughts. Like earlier, you mentioned the Naval Postgraduate School, and what's amazing is there are videos of lectures that you could see on YouTube. The ones I'm familiar with are Richard Hamming, a whole series of lectures he did. And let me see. I mean, yeah, I wonder if Engelbart actually looked at breakout rooms, the equivalent, or with NLS. I know he had shared NLS sessions. I don't know if he ever had like breakouts within that.
Sam may have a comment, but I kind of doubt it. I don't know that in Engelbart's day the Dunbar number was part of the vernacular. Um, I mean, Engelbart was already starting into his Alzheimer's by the time World Cafe came along, and people were realizing that small conversations, and we were using World Cafes at Stanford at an Engelbart Fettschrift, and that was 5 tables, tables a set of 4 or 5. Now Sam was probably there when we did one at the Tech Museum where we had tables set with order of magnitude 10 or 20 people. And my recollection is that those tables we got nothing done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
indeed.
I don't know if you're remembering Program for the Future, but there were 5 of those, and we did 3 of them at the Tech Museum, and we did incorporate World Cafe-like format into it.
Yes. And but the I know that at one of them we got to the table and there was order of magnitude 20 people.
Yeah.
And uh, and so they said, well, let's go around the table and introduce ourselves. And it got fine until it got to the last lady who took the whole rest of the time to tell us all about her life and her puppies and her whatever. And we got nothing done.
Now,
So,
Heiner, uh, I just want to mention that,
you go.
yeah, Heiner has an interesting thing where people have cards and they deal to other people if they want to hear that person speak. So it's more about choosing who you want to listen to as a way of orienting the group.
Well, Mei Lin used talking stones when we with
Right.
small ones, and and you always got the asshole that wouldn't let go of the stone, but you,
So, so folks, what I'm trying to gesture at here is a platform where we can learn and experiment with all of the different modalities that were just described. Okay. So that's the point, is that it's a live platform that is so flexible and fungible in its mechanisms that we can experiment agilely with socio-technical processes? Sam.
So I kind of warned you guys I have multiple things to say about this. So shut me up after 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 1 minute or whatever you want. Okay. Number one, the whole idea of conversation being augmented by knowledge and topic tools is something that Jack and I and you and others, Eric probably and Doug and others, and Peter, probably Peter, have been thinking about for decades. Our experiments here convince me that the world has two different kinds of people. People who think that that adds to conversations and people who think that that detracts from conversations. Now, in the example that you give, if I hear something really pertinent that you said and I really want to respond to it, and I'm now, in my own channel and I'm not recording a response to it, I'm not hearing the rest of what you said or what anybody else responded to you with. Okay. So it kind of like forks that conversation at a PIT, a point in time. And then I'm catching up with the rest of it. And then I'm probably never back into the real time again, unless I like have a way to speed it up to 1.5 or 1.75, to catch up into the rest of it. So that's idea number one. Idea number two is people think differently. So just recording the ideas that are actually appearing in a conversation and putting that into a shared artifact that everybody has access to is also unfamiliar to people because as I hear what I'm hearing, my mental model's kind of, creating these branches and leaves and whatever, and yours is creating a different set, and Jack's is, and Eric's is, and for me to see something else doesn't really map to what's in my mind. So I first have to evolve my model and then see where mine maps to a separate one, whether it's the shared one or whether it's yours or Jack's or Eric's. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is a parallel activity which also kind of detracts from really paying full attention to what is being said. Okay. Now,
Totally.
add to that the multimodality that you said, which is not just conversation, but imagine now that we're visually able to manipulate topics and connect them and color
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
augment them, and, read whatever. Okay. And that again adds a whole mix of modalities. And some people pay attention to that, and some people just get blown away by that.
Totally, totally, exactly. Everybody's got different cognitive styles, right? So what Thinker Toys does, and earlier generations of the tech that follow this practice too, is that there's a multi-panel UX that lets you those what is it MD is it Windows MDI that means multi non like what are they called?
Multiple document interface. Is that what you're
Well,
referring
yeah. Oh God, what
to?
are
Yeah,
those?
Windows was overlapping.
What are
So
the non-overlap? What's the general term for the non-overlapping
Tiled.
tiling? Yes. So imagine a tiling UX, okay, framework. In effect, it's like a desktop manager at the outermost level, and the different panels are and I can demo this. Oh, sorry. I've got a login bug at the moment, so that's challenging. But that I can share a video though. But the panels are either web browser panels in effect. So that what ThinkerToys is the first browser for the merged mental model. Okay. And so just like the first browser for the www embraced and extended the old modalities, i.e. Gopher, Wace, Telnet, okay, in the same way that the first browsers embraced the old protocols, this first browser for the MMM embraces the web, okay? And so some of the panels then can be, in effect, web pages. Other panels are windows into the MMM or video channels of other humans. Okay, so the windows into the MMM are these pan media UXs into this shared cognitive artifact. Okay, this merged mental model in the cloud. So So just like we all understand how ER entity relationship, how relational models or OOP models can lie behind current business data management UXs, right? So we know how to do those things. We're all hackers. We've done thousands of those stupid things, right? Well, the MMM is uh, has a functional superset of the capabilities of ER and OOP. So it does all of that. You can do all that stuff, but it can also go metacognitive. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that it can do that the prior things can't. Okay. So that means that we can easily make UXs that replicated all the old crud, literally, CRUD, um, but that interact with this growing collaborative superposition of all of our collected understandings. So instead of the old modality where we take our ideas and we cram them through UXs into documents where the ideas go to die, okay, instead in this new modality, we take our ideas from our private mental model and we express them with tool support for ambiguity reduction, okay, and terminal and basically conceptual reuse. We curate them into the merged mental model through UXs that are essentially familiar because they're the same sort of thing that we've been making for 50 years, 80 years. Okay, but they go into a knowledge store that is the superposition of all of our understandings. And so yeah, so you're absolutely right, Sam. Sometimes it's easier to just blurt stuff in there to just express yourself without paying attention to what others have said. If you do that, well, then you later have to do the job of trying to stitch the and discover the equivalencies. Well, that's one of the tasks for us as a species is to try to understand equivalencies across our models, right? Okay. But with this critter, there's tooling that supports the disambiguation at the moment of assertion. Okay. So that you're knitting. So if you're a little bit more patient and after a bit of practice, then you and as those real-time disambiguation facilities improve and the UXs for them improve, then what happens is that you're really disambiguated at the moment of assertion, and so you're growing a the merged mental model in real time. And so imagine this call, but with one of the panels being a wiggly graph diagram, and another panel being a table of alternatives, and another panel, and we can all see them and interact with them, and some of us can have different ones on our own screens and over. And when we interact with them, it's real time updated on one another's screens. These aren't private. These these can be private views, but we can also have them set so that they're tuning in to what everybody in the group is saying. Or, oh God, I can dial down or out Bob's contributions because Bob is literally insane. And I can't handle him. Over. Sorry for the rant.
Okay,
Does
I'm
that
going to start with an Engelbartian theme, and that a lot of this is technology proposed as a solution before we've agreed on what the problem is. Now, I know that's a controversial statement, okay? But in my mind, if I try to, let's say, as objectively as I can, do a mind map in this conversation in real time of whatever was discussed, okay? I guarantee you it's not going to be the way you would do it, and not the way Eric would do it, and not the way Jack would do it, not the way anybody else listening later would do it. Because it all starts from what's already in my head. That's a different starting point for everyone. And to say, okay, we're going to start tabula rasa with just nothing as a starting point, and then just insert phrases and words as it goes, doesn't connect back to what I already know, or it's too expensive because there's already a bunch of structure here that I wish were out here in the shared space. And why do I have to recreate it again? And all of that distracts from focus. So the human side, tool system side, also invites a conversation, which is we're going to have to change our protocols. Today, in real-time conversation, we seem to value 100% presence. In fact, I hear a lot of people come onto these calls, and certain people in these past conversations have really focused on this. They say, if you're not fully present, then you're not really authentic when you show up. And my somewhat distracted objections to that are, but what if I really want to take notes? And what if I really want to mind map this for all of us? And, Colin was really trying to do it on Kaggle or Coggle or whatever. And some of us are trying to do it on a different tool or workflowy or just a regular text. So the whole point about do we value attention is something we need to understand and re-deliberate on to see whether or not we are being disrespectful if we drop out and start working on a different tributary of thought. Because as long as this assumed 100% nature of our attention and focus is the key to how someone sees that we're showing up, then this alternative reformulation of thoughts and reconnecting of thoughts and offline modeling is just taking you out of the conversation. And that appears disrespectful to a lot of people. I've encountered this in the last 7 or 8 years, probably even going back to 2011. Okay. So that's a thing that I'm not saying is right or wrong. I'm just saying that people have different assumptions around it. And until we figure that out, they're not going to engage and then see that your contributions on this are intended to assist.
The
Now you're
the
shaking
the
your head.
the
So
new we're going to be co-evolving the technology with the mores and the practices.
that's what I'm saying is we have to
We have
co-deliberate what we find acceptable and value as authentic presence.
so it isn't that we're going to be able to decide on those on the mores before we have the technology that lets us learn about what the new potentialities are, right?
Yeah, it's in
As
parallel. Yeah.
exactly as the potentialities are elaborating, that's what. Meanwhile, we will be co-evolving the fresh mores, right? And it won't just be one set of mores, right? Like there'll be different groups with different meaning
Did I
until
freeze or did Shawn
I
freeze?
have to speak. What's that?
Did I freeze or did you freeze?
No, I just did a weird thing. I quaked like a
Okay.
Quaker.
Could be my internet
You had
connection.
that
Sorry.
experience? Oh, I thought it was my pretending to be a Quaker.
Hmm.
As an example of quaking is a sociotechnical process for collaborative sense making.
Okay. Again, I'm saying too much. I still have way more to say, but I want to make sure Eric and Jack have their airtime as well.
I'm wondering if we go back to when everything was just text, if there was more productive discussion going on in threads, and I think, or if there was slower thinking, because I think we're in a place where we're reacting to video and audio. Myself is just find a good pattern for consuming things offline and doing my own sense making of it without worrying about how I look or who I'm with. So I'm just throwing that out there. Can we learn from the olden days and take some practices forward?
If I may, Eric, it was the case that I'm sorry, Jack. Super great. I didn't mean to interrupt. We had different skills. We had a different nature of concentration ability. Our sentences were longer. Okay, they had more commas. There was more. it's well established that in English and in German, for instance, the sentence structures were more elaborate. Okay, that's that's a kind of scholarship and distributed skill across the whole society in our writing and reading capacities that has that is certainly, I don't know if it's been lost, but it's certainly in decline, right? So that's another coevolution, right? The cohort is changing all the time in its capacities, right? And
Right.
co-evolving with the technologies of distributed cognition, which are actual in our current reality. Over.
Good morning, Kayla.
Good morning.
Hey,
So I have an observation. Actually, I have several observations, but the top one is that I've observed in even these sessions, and I observe it in FedWiki sessions, and I observe it in OGM sessions, where people are talking past each other and literally not hearing, not listening. Um, that's why I muted and just decided to listen. I could jump in and rant and do things, but what I see in this room is a lot of creativity and brilliance uh, that that is not yet well focused. Um, I'm going to tell you guys a story about Sam that you've never heard. Let's go back to the 1950s and Samuel crap, what was his name? Samuel, what's his name? It's Stanford was trying to make a computer game that would play chess or checkers. And John Holland worked for him. And John Holland invented something called genetic algorithms, which used little bit strings to imagine a checkerboard and checker players. And then it used genetic mutations, crossover, breeding, etc., to figure out which bit configurations uh, could win a tournament. And that caused the checkers game to go on and actually start beating pretty high level champions. So this was genetic programming at a bit string level. Well, there's this guy named Doug Lenat years later at Stanford who used genetic algorithms at the symbol level, concepts, mutating concepts, combining them, mixing them, matching them. And he did it for a naval war game and for a 3D VLSI design. His program Eurisco said, you could stack transistors on a VLSI chip. And nobody ever tried it. Nobody ever thought of it. And so they brought senior moment here. They brought the VLSI king of the world, who was at Caltech, up to Stanford to build it, and he did. Sam funded a project where Eurisco was to look at global situations. And the program the
geopolitical.
is called Sam, do you remember the full name of the paper? I call it Strads.
Strategic Automated Discovery System.
Yeah. And the actual the paper was actually a chapter in a whole book, but that paper is online at ResearchGate under Doug Lennon. You'll find it. Um, Sam has been involved in this space and with Engelbart. He was involved with Engelbart long before I was.
1992.
And in 92, and I didn't meet him until 2000. And when I met him, he heard what I was doing and invited me to talk at his Unrev conference at Stanford, which I did. Um, but when I listened to Sam talk about things, I realized that Sam, given his proclivity to really dive into what he calls collaborology, may be way ahead of all of us in all of this. But my final thought is we still tend in all of these sessions to, as Sam correctly pointed out, pick some point out and then stop listening and dive on it when we get a chance. Um, I think that's a problem that needs solving. My own solution is to avoid face to face. I prefer to go into a structured conversation space where I can study everything that was said and literally hear it before I react. Now, we know lots of people will go into the same space and not hear it and react out from the hip, which is why our first approach to this is to put them in guilds where they don't get to do that. Over.
So, do you remember right at the outset, the first words out of my mouth today were, can we please examine the different capabilities, basically, or um, capacities of the different arities of conversation. Okay, so a one-on-one mind meld, um, it isn't really. Let's see how to say this. Um, it's possible for two people in such a context to share the mic very gracefully, right? And if their spirit is going into it, sharing the mic fluidly, then a mind meld can occur. And the exploration that duo has in its capacity to go on is undisturbed by interruption. Okay. And so that's an arity of distributed cognition, which has the possibility for completely harmonious um, um, behavior and elaboration. Arities greater than two have the challenge that any pair might be engaged in a handshaking operation where they're merging their understandings, and the third party, by trying to get in on the act or be heard or clarify something for their own understanding, etc., by interjecting interferes with the runaway merger of the mental models of the duo. And so there's a hard line at after two, wherein after two, it's possible through great grace and luck, Sam, for three to behave as gracefully as two if there's already substantial overlap, if there's already substantial merger in the mental models of the participants. Okay, it is possible, but it's far from the rule and it's hard. Okay, but areas beyond two are necessarily challenged and get us into this space of there not being a graceful way deeply for um, the precision model from Bandler is another alternative to the talking stick. Okay, there are all sorts of socio-technical processes that we can run, right? That we can discipline these different arities with, for sure. Um, over. But generally,
I
we
want
fall into chaos. Over.
I want to acknowledge in full depth what you say about arities of conversation. I also agree. I do think that two on two, sorry, one on one is a unique form. And where both are really trying to be mutually and generously curious about each other. That's fabulous. Okay. Now, notice that I'm taking interaction models as the general engagement scenario for two, let's say right now, human entities. Now, it could be engagement orally, it could be engagement on a hike, it could be engagement via intimacy, it could be engagement via ping pong. There's a lots of different forms of engagement. Okay. That's why I say there's thousands. Now, I have also found that the arity of three, to me, is very magical, equally as magical as one-on-one. Because in those conversations, when two people are really trying to really understand each other, and there's someone else who is kind of watching that happen and saying, well, wait, there was a term there that was really confusing to the other person, but the other person didn't realize it. That's the kind of disambiguation that really assists. And it also allows a third party to be, let's say, a future observer or a future listener and sort of put that hat on and say, what would a future observer slash audience make of this? And, was there like too much being said at one time, or was this person talking too fast, or were there too many mutual conversational interrupts, and were there terms that are not being defined? And that third person, when it takes that very different role, can really add to that interaction style. Okay. And by the way, that's when Tammy Lee Meyer was engaged. We were trying to do that in a number of different kind of conversations based on this model. And then when it comes to four, there's interesting dynamics there as well. You have the possibility of things blowing up because it could say these two really team up against those two, and then you have, interesting dynamics there. Five is also interesting. Now, it also is very interesting. It shares that boards choose different numbers, usually odd, obviously because they need a tiebreaker, right? It's usually in the five or seven, for medium-sized and small companies, and then you get these very large numbers in very large companies. Um, so I've compiled one of my hobbies has been compiling these multiple different, and I've got hundreds of them, engagement model types. Okay. And for each of them, if we understand how we're going into this interaction, then people can take those roles and take those essentially guidelines and have a very good conversation. Now, if I come into a conversation thinking we're going to have an exploratory conversation and you're coming in with a sales close kind of conversation, that's going to be a very different, very not very productive for either of us kind of conversation, right? So I think we need to set the context much more carefully before we say this number is the best or that number doesn't work. Because it all depends on what each person comes to that interaction thinking what is possible. Over.
Those are different Wittgensteinian language games, right? The sales pitch versus the you know cocktail conversation versus the you know, circulate the stick, pass the talking stick, right? These, and they're thousands exactly, and they're latent, they're implicit. We don't even have names for them all, right? Um, for sure, and knowing what those are, gives actually provides the operational context that gives meaning to the words and the statements that are being exchanged in the context. Over.
I'd like to invite Kayla to share if she wants to. Just observations of these men as the observer. She's willing to.
Thank you for allowing me that platform. And it's funny because I really don't see at this point, a bunch of men talking right now, because you're touching on a subject that I feel strongly about. Jack, I just want to acknowledge that. I do feel like this society in general just does not know how to listen well. And it's problematic and it shows. I don't know about any magic number. I personally prefer one-on-ones, but I have been invited to spaces where you have a group of people who are given opportunities to speak, but it's very structured. It's almost like what people would say would be the talking stick. And I prefer actually one-on-ones in that type of space, just because there is tremendous value in listening. And then the first thought that came to mind was when I was invited to be a part of the Leadership Academy here in Ventura County. They asked me what I would bring to the table if I were in this cohort. And I said it's the ability to listen, because most people give, a lot of respect to those who can articulate well, who can articulate fast, and who can get to the point by kind of talking right away. Yeah. We place a lot of value on that and very little value on the person who actually takes the time to think about what was said, and maybe come back to it later. Now, there's a time and place for quick thinking. You definitely in an emergency situation don't want somebody who has to think about it and then come back, and there's chaos and death and all kinds of awful things. But there are subjects where it really does need a lot more thought. And in my own experience, having been married to somebody who talked a lot and who talked really fast and who got to the point. It confused me, it confused our friends, and it confused our family, because the articulation was so done so well that you almost had to say that that person's right, or that person has a point, or that person's really smart and thought things through, when in fact they don't. They just don't know how to listen. And there's just so many nuances in that. By the way, am I going completely off topic here?
No, this is great. We need to hear
Yeah.
it.
Again, it's so circumstantial, and I was also thinking that I really do enjoy talking spaces in a professional setting. I think I thrive well there. And it's only because, everybody is in the organization, or, the cohort, or whatever space they're in professionally. We're all on the same page, pretty much. It's really difficult when you have these brilliant minds together in one space, and it's almost like an unstructured conversational space, because there's a lot of people with a lot of things to bring to the table, and I can see how distracting that can be. I myself am distracted probably about 50% of the time, only on a personal level, and also because whatever we bring here us right now to the table is so rich that um, it's almost impossible to talk about one thing without going into various branches of the topic. And with that, I am complete. And I hope that answers your question. And I hope I was sort of kind of on topic.
Thank you. So I've been reading a book. It's called The Maniac by Benjamin Labatut, and it's about John von Neumann, his life as told in a fiction way from the perspective of other people in his life. And what I'm finding fascinating is how this genius level thinker had such difficulty relating to people. Maybe on a professional sense, he could communicate, but even then, yeah, communicating complicated mathematics, that's a whole different uh, game. And he invented game theory, by the way, which I found fascinating to learn that. So, I mean, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I think there's something in recognizing the social dynamics of people at different levels of mental knowledge or whatever. And like even here, I could have an inferiority complex if I'm surrounded by greatness that I perceive. And without, yeah, but I need to I could follow certain parts of things, but I would need more time to study. And what I like about Engelbart is he created tools to help people study. You collapse your outlines, you focus on different paragraphs, you show them in different ways. And so, like, what I'm trying to study on my own is lectures that were given at MIT in 1986 about the structure and interpretation of computer programs, which is a fascinating book about Lisp. And there's like 20 lectures online where I could take one at a time, as much time as I want, to study Hal Abelson and another guy, Jerry, who presented that class. And then I have the text online as well. I can dig deep into the text and I can take code from that text, put it into a Lisp interpreter, and learn it at my own pace without any pressure. So, that's just where I am. That's showing like an aspiration of how I would approach something really complex that Sam inspired me to pursue. Okay. So that's sort of a collaboration we have going on. Go ahead, Jack.
Um, Firstly, Kayla was on topic, totally on topic. Secondly, you mentioned Neumann.
Mm-hmm.
I often wondered if he was somewhere on the spectrum.
Probably.
And so I could have this entirely wrong, but here's the story. Most of you, no, some of you may know that Oliver Selfridge wrote the first AI program. It was called Pandemonium. And it was published in 1958 on Her Majesty's Stationery. He was a Brit. And so sometime around 1986, I met him. And I walked up to him. We were at a conference, and he was at a chalkboard doing something. And I walked up to him and I said, I'd like to ask you some questions, Dr. Selfridge. He says, "Oh God, don't call me as doctor." And I said, "Well, your son's a doctor." And he says, "Yeah, but not me." And I said, "What happened?" And he said, and I believe this is what he said, but remember, this is an 80-year-old brain. Von Neumann was my thesis chair, and von Neumann did not want anybody to have a PhD.
Why would he say that?
He thought he was the only guy that could do it. Now,
People have died holding that thought.
I'll add to that. My sister was in a PhD program at a major Southern California university to remain unnamed. And when she went to talk to him about her thesis proposal, his answer was, girls can't get PhDs. She left the program, and her husband's uncle cut his endowment to the university. And so that professor got fired. And that professor was a very big name in computer science. Kayla.
If you're speaking, you're on
Sorry.
mute.
No, I was like, I hate this phone, but I mean, it's the only way I can talk to you guys. So, you know, I was cursing and stuff as I was trying to get to the button. But may
Just
I kind of go back and ask what the topic was from the beginning? I apologize for coming on so late. I was using the bathroom. Um, and then I did want to say something that is relatable and also personal too. Oh, the topic is emerging. Okay. Can you give me a little bit more? Oh. I thought you guys, okay, my brain right now is not, he's like, the topic is emerging. And I thought that was like literally the actual topic. So I apologize. Okay. Kind of going back to listening. I want to tell you something that is very, 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 very personal, but also very relatable. My dad was in the hospital for about 3 weeks this past month. He wasn't doing so great. He got admitted and suffered a stroke, and it was terrible. So it was like we unfortunately he is currently on hospice at home now. But during those times, it was very difficult, especially after the stroke, to understand him. I mean, the funny thing is, it had always been kind of difficult for people to understand him, for family to understand him, because of two things. Number one, they couldn't really understand his words. And this was even before the stroke happened, right? Um, and then, second, they didn't have the mental capacity to understand him. It was almost like, and this is my sister, my brother, my mom, various friends and family, to which, later on my dad had complained to me, you're the only one who listens to me. You're the only one who understands. And I feel like it's because we have kind of the same mental capacity. He's a very deep thinker. He's a philosophizer. I'm a total daddy's girl. So of course I'm going to listen to him, and then I also feel like I have meaningful things to say to him too. And so when I was in the hospital, well, before that, my sister would tell me, Dad's really hard to understand. He's babbling. I just can't understand him. Then she would put him on speakerphone and you can hear him babbling, right? And so, anyways, I couldn't really understand him too until I actually went to the hospital and, you know, listened to him, really listened to him. I stood by the hospital bed. I put my face close to his. And I just did that instinctively. And it's only because, for him to really see and understand me, I want him to know that I am listening. I don't know what his eyesight's like. I don't know anything. And so, I leaned and anyhow, in that setting, in that capacity, we were able to communicate. It was very, very difficult to understand him. I almost want to say that it took 70% of the, 70% I understood. And it took me repeating to him what I thought I had heard. And it was such a lovely conversation, even though it was very plain. I mean, from that actual conversation, I was able to finally acknowledge a lot of what he, was trying to teach us as kids. I was able to validate him, as an adult, to tell him I understand. I was even able to tell him I was mad at him, as a teenager and as a young woman. But now I get it. I understand. And there is something rich to be learned about that in humanity in general. You know, first, there is that level of caring that you see on both sides, both sides. Second is that real interest in understanding each other, no matter what, overcoming all of those barriers. Now, it's easy for me to say, okay, because it's my dad, and he's on his deathbed. And there's always different perspectives, when somebody is like end of life. And the third is to just validate and check in where you're at and where you were at. And it's I cried a lot, of course. you know, um, I was just thinking about things that you know matter to the okay. I'll just say this. I was angry for a very long time at him, at my mom, at my family, and I'm probably still going to be angry at them in the future. But in that moment, that perspective really just took it out. And so, Jack, when you had brought up listening, that always brings happiness in my heart because there's just not enough of it. And there's not enough of that caring to listen either. And so I just wanted to share that. I like Eric, I too feel like sometimes I don't belong in this space. The early portions of GCC, I used to call myself a bimbo in jest. I know I'm not a bimbo, but because, I don't have anybody great to reference. I didn't follow a lot of these, great philosophical people. I'm just a regular person that likes watching Netflix. And, from time to time, I'll be very interested in politics, a little bit more interested in most. But, unfortunately, as my dad said, I did not have a formal education that he had wanted me to have. And so I really appreciate you guys giving me this space to listen. And I hope this serves eventually as an example to the rest of the world that we really need to just start listening to each other because it would probably solve a lot of problems. Over.
Violent agreement.
I want to thank you for sharing that. My parents are 94 and 93, and my mom has changed as cancer takes over, and the communication is much more difficult than it used to be. So I hear what you're going through. It makes you wonder how important our brains are and what it takes to sustain them, that the physical body takes to keep going, and the mental capacity. And it's what is important. I mean, in that book, there's a chapter describing John von Neumann's decline before he died. And it's dramatic. And yeah, yeah, go ahead. Whoever's next.
Yeah, on that theme of John von Neumann's decline, who was it? Was it Ed Teller who recalled of that the most exquisite pain he's ever seen in anyone was in von Neumann in his decline, feeling not tongue-tied but almost mind-tied, that he perceived he felt the loss of his capacities and was just so devastated by the loss of the awesome pleasure it must have been to operate that finest instrument.
There was a day when I would be driving along a two-lane road at maybe 50 miles an hour, and here comes another car at me at 50 miles an hour. And I marveled that we didn't crash. In those days, it's changing, but in those days, the fact that that car remained in its lane was under the control of 3 pounds of what otherwise looks like whale blubber. Now, today, of course, you've got your Teslas that go right down the center of the lane and so forth. But 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 in overall in the largest picture, the fact that we don't have more crashes staggers the brain to think that the bulk of what's guiding those guided missiles is this little blob of whale blubber. That's got to count for something.
Yeah, a lot of it's still a mystery. We have no clue about a lot of how it works. AI is guessing at it, but still. Um, yeah, go ahead, Sam.
So I'm actually going to answer Kayla's question. And it kind of illustrates a problem that we've been kind of dancing around today. Kayla asked, "What is the topic?" Jack answered, "It's emerging." And I said, as we engage, let's say for the last 74 minutes, we each have had certain things that have meant something to us that we really wanted to plug back into our own brains and into our own knowledge structures because it had meaning to us and it added value to us, whether it was sentiment, whether it was understanding, how to annotate knowledge structures in real-time conversation, whether it's how we manage focus and attention, whether or not we can actually co-create a knowledge artifact in real time in conversation, whether it's that we have to mix, the synchronous versus the asynchronous modes of conversation, whether we even value focus and attention, or whether we can value that somebody could go offline and really ruminate on something that's very curious and meaningful to that person, or whether or not we have the different dynamics of different conversation arities, meaning, two-person conversation, three-person conversation, four-person, five, six, seven, eight, etc., and the different kinds of dynamics that are there, plus the fact that there's a smart people problem, which is when people get together, there's too many topics to talk about, and we only have one talking stick, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when I answer Kayla and say these are all the topics we have been talking about, and one of the problems we identified is each of us has one or more of those topics that we want to respond to. And if we respond to those, it sounds and even appears that we're not in the flow of the current conversation because it's not just immediately following up on what was just said. It was following up on something that maybe occurred minutes ago or maybe an hour ago. Okay. But that is a problem of how we actually want to engage and the different kinds of engagement models, whether are we in a brainstorming session? Are we in a co-creative sense-making session? Are we in a planning session? Are we in a coffee clutch? Are we in a team forming kind of conversation? Are we in a just checking in on each other? And is it a social kind of engagement? Each of us has different models of what's at play in these things. And when we don't match, that's when disappointment happens or miscommunication happens. And it's so subtle that we can see and feel the irritation. We can see the, turning away. We can see the body language happen when those mismatches happen. That's not carried through in the transcript. It's only evident if you're actually seeing and hearing in real time. So those are some of the things that we've been talking about. So that's my answer to your question, Kayla, of what have we been talking about? And this particular response is again part of that problem because I'm responding to something that Kayla asked maybe 15 minutes ago. And it wasn't immediately following up on what was just said, even though I still have many thoughts on those things. So I apologize for the disconnect, but I also wanted to, identify that it's happening even as we speak. Over.
A minor correction. It was Shawn that typed that the topic is emerging in the chat room. I didn't offer that solution. But yeah, topics always emerge. Um, and yes, you I think that I feel like you, Sam, echoed my comment that I sense that we just talk past each other. And it would be my wish if Kayla wanted a topic, it would be how do we fix that?
So in the one-on-one, sorry, go ahead, Sam.
No, I was about to say, Shawn, you've got your hand up.
So in the one-on-one, we can humans of goodwill and professional skill, like they know how to talk to one another well enough to be able to engage productively in a one-on-one conversation, um, uh, can engage in the process of mind meld and synchronization of their private mental models sufficiently so that talking past one another is, generally speaking, something that can be avoided. In the multi-party, in essentially all multi-party modalities, except with the extremely skilled, we have the challenge that talking past one another is the attractor, is the thing that in essence almost must happen because of because our PMMs, our private mental models, are inadequately aligned, and we don't have agreement about what the language game is necessarily. And we don't necessarily have agreement about what the topic is. So the language game and the topic and the deep topic must be well shared for a group um, to be able to not talk past one another. Or
Let me try this. I'll try not to go too long. I think rather than trying to avoid talking past each other, to me, it's more key to be aware of when it might be happening. And then to figure out, shall I let it go or shall I try and fix it in real time? Because trying to spend the time to do a waterfall, i.e., let's disambiguate and then talk, is too stilted. It's too artificial. The real-time nature of it says that I'm going to use what words are in here. You're going to use whatever words are in there. I'm pointing to your ears, okay? And to do that full mapping ahead of time is artificial. People don't talk that way. People don't come and say, I'm going to use these following 15 words. What 15 words are you going to use? Oh, you're going to use those 22. Okay, let's do this mapping. Okay, now we can have that conversation. That doesn't happen. It has to happen more in real time. And that's, I think, a skill set, not a phase model of conversation. So that's what I would add. Over.
So in chat earlier, I was comparing us to a college class where everybody is on the same page because they've agreed on a topic to study together. They have a book, they have homework, and the professor has a prepared lesson guiding them. And that's not what we are here. That's, but I could see more productivity in a classroom setting if it's done right. But what are we really trying to achieve? I don't think we're trying to achieve productivity. I think we're trying to connect more. Now, I just want to mention, I'm not sure if this is off topic or what, but there's a new episode of Star Trek that I saw yesterday, just came out. It's about four members of the crew who get changed into Vulcans. So you could see a dramatic shift in their personalities as they start thinking everything logically through. And then they have other characters. They show the contrast, even a real Vulcan coming on board and interacting with the crew. And I like those dynamics. I think there's a lot we could learn from just observing, yeah, fiction and drawing from that. So I could see like some of us are very technically oriented, and it's a struggle to catch up sometimes to that level if I'm not don't have the full context. Others are trying to be, yeah, like connectors, and yeah, we're all trying to figure this out together, and it's a process, but yeah, and we all have different frames of reference that we're bringing in to these conversations. Yeah. Thanks. Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, this is so I'm straining to deliver a platform that sees to it that these different kinds of gift that we can all give to the group can be honored in effect simultaneously, right? That the platform can serve each of us as we need with the visualizations that suit our style of cognition and our state of knowledge, right? And at the same time provide us all with interaction modalities, expressive modalities that make it possible for us to contribute to the magical phenomenon that we're that we're co-creating through our interaction, right? So, I think that what I've just described is basically kind of the minimum requirement for the next thing. is that it supports everybody's unique cognitive requirements and also supports everybody's unique cognitive contributions in parallel. And so that's why I'm trying to build that, because that's my sense of what our needs are.
So I'd like to do a thought experiment. Say all of a sudden we have technology where you're projecting holograms anywhere you go, and you have all the capabilities of a computer at your fingertips or at your voice or even your thoughts. So then everybody can connect digitally, and then they could keep their own notes, they could collaborate, and we could be sitting in the same room, each with our own thing. Well, it's similar to what you see now, a cafe, people or family, people on their phones in the family room. So it's not, yeah, the tools will get better and give us more capabilities. But I'm also listening to an audiobook from the 90s by James Glick, and it's called Faster. And he talks about the watch, the history of time keeping, and the fact that back in the 90s, he was saying that, yeah, the function of the watch was very different than the smart watches. And he was, yeah, speculating on, do all these features, if we had all these features, would it help us or not? Well, it comes down to Engelbart's research. It's the human systems that have to work with whatever magic tools we get or create. Yeah, I mean, I love the ambition to improve tools and yes, share ideas. But see, we're a subset of the world, and a lot of people are not like us, and whatever we come up with would not work for them, right? So yeah, you got to define your audience, and
I disagree. I disagree with that, Eric. I think that there's some basic needs that are really pretty universal, and that addressing those technical needs for the capabilities of a platform will actually serve a huge proportion of the world's collaborative cognitive requirements, and that if we have an adequate platform that can be extended in the right ways, then we can asymptotically serve the rest of those the rest of those emergent needs as our understanding of our needs co-evolves with our technology, with a technology platform that can evolve with us.
okay,
But
those
that's
are
the action plan.
great aspirations. The key is, will it get adopted in our current society with the way things get rolled out and yeah, sabotaged or whatever. Trying to find the right word.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Those are the hazards. But look, we're trying to use the very best tools that we know of, and here we are talking past one another, right?
Yep.
Nope.
And so, right, so that's
Nope.
not our fault. That's the fault of our inadequate tooling. Okay? We and our tools haven't co-evolved the adequate capabilities for us to basically operate at the next level of collaborative capability. My dearest friends, would it be possible for me to share my screen with you for a moment?
I'm okay with it.
Are you okay with that, Sam? No.
Yeah.
I would just like to point out that one of the this isn't me um, nagging at Zoom, but I'd just like to point out that Zoom doesn't let everybody share their screens all at the same time, right? Like Jitsi does. Okay. My point is not to say, oh, Jitsi's the best and Zoom is really bad, but rather what I'm saying is that notice that we're not free to share fluidly of our screens in Zoom. That capability is something that would really augment the parallelizability and sharing among us if we had it. So that I would suggest that that's an important feature for an adequate platform to have, right? Because it gives everybody the ability to share in real time. Okay. Anyway, uh, I would suggest that this is our situation, that we're going through this trajectory of we started with natural language, and we've got socio-technical processes, and we've got technical phenomena that are emerging successively and taking us. Humans are the species which think together with tools we make ourselves. Okay, we make tools for thinking together, and that is uniquely us. Okay, so there are lots of other species that have language. Okay, that's a starting point that we share with whales and birds. They seem to be able to talk to one another too. Okay. But we went and invented story and lyric and math, hieroglyphs, cuneiform, books, blah, blah, blah. And there was this piling on of technologies with which we think together. And I'm suggesting that this is all in effect in service. All of these communications technologies have been in service of us trying to knit together our private mental models and share of our understandings. And I would submit that where we're trying to get to teleologically is this place where we've got a shared address space for our thoughts, so that we don't have to share them, so that we don't have to laboriously fling them over the transom to one another from one address space to another address space, that instead we can work on them together in a shared address space. Over. How does that land? Is that hearable?
Yeah, definitely.
I could follow
I'd
it.
like to layer something on top of that, if I may. I like this. I think that much of what we have collected as far as what we've called knowledge throughout all of history does take these forms, going all the way back to cave drawings, to Library of Alexandria, to Webb, to Library of Congress, to, academia, to whatever it is, okay? But the key difference, and I'd like to introduce it, and I think that's what you're suggesting here, is that up until now, what has been possible is thoughts that have been thought, i.e., memory. I think the key difference now is how do we create new thoughts? Now, all of these technologies here have assisted individuals in creating new thoughts. Let's say I read a book, or I go to the library, or I, do some arithmetic. All of those things help me, in my mind, create a new thought, potentially. Not all thoughts are new, but new to me. The question is, how do we now create new thoughts beyond just a single brain, a single skull, a single frontal cortex? Let's put yours and mine possibly together. Is the technology evolved far enough now that we can actually co-create new thoughts in our mutual shared thinking space, what you're calling thinker toys and what other people have called other things, okay? Together so that we can actually do that thought creation process together, not just encode old thoughted memories. That's the key difference. If we can solve that problem, the future is really very interesting. Now, I'll just add one more thought to that, which is that the things that seem to be able to co-create new thoughts right now at the current state of technology are AI agents. They're not humans. Are they truly new thoughts? I don't know. That's debatable. Are they truly doing it themselves? No, a human is really kind of, directing them, prompting them, guiding them, et cetera, et cetera. But they're really kind of working on it together, whereas we don't yet have the ability for two brains to really do that well. Over.
And so that's what I'm saying. Here's the old world, separated cognition, or the WWW world, is this one where we're each confined to our private mental model, and the workflow is we perceive things, we read, we perceive the world, we perceive one another, new ideas come to us through the consumption of documents off the web. We confine to our private mental model using only the ideas that have managed to laboriously get jammed into our noggins. Okay. We then laboriously produce more documents. Can you guys see my screen? I'm
Yeah.
pointing at things on the screen here,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we
yeah.
see it.
And then this line here is showing this little guffer at the top here presenting the product of his laborious brain work was so hard. And then he puts it out onto the web. Yeah. He produces a presentation. They produce a presentation that goes onto the web. And here are LLMs, and they're confined to interacting with the L. Here's an an AI, as we're calling them these days, that is confined to its LLM. And there's some multimodal stuff going on. So there's also some real-time web access that's happening because of the ridiculous amount of hallucination that was going on. They had to patch on some, hey, let's just do a reality check here against the web. What were you dreaming? You poor LLM. Okay. But that's what they're doing too, is dumping things onto the web in effect, or humans are getting robots in effect to put things on the web. In this new modality that I'm describing here, the collaborative cognition modality, or the in the world of the MMM, look at this. Do you see the Sam? There's the MMM over here. It's in the cloud. Oh, too. Okay. And we still have our private mental models, but we have the opportunity now to curate our understandings into a merged or a superposition of everybody's mental models. Okay, a shared address space for our old thoughts and those new thoughts that you were pointing at wanting to create together, Sam. Okay, this is where we can do that. It's a container in which we can do that. And part of the reason why it's super important that we have a new machine-supported container for us to do this collaborative cognition on and in is because our little noggins are constrained by the fact that we are mere monkeys in pants who only have the ability to hold 7 plus or minus 2 subjects in mind at once. So once the number of candidates exceeds that limit, once the number of perspectives exceeds that one, even just one more perspective is a challenge, right? To be able to necker around and view a different perspective. Once the number of criteria for evaluating candidates goes beyond that, et cetera, then our little monkey limits are overblown at every turn. But there's not, the solutions are going to involve 700 considerations, not 7. Okay, us undoing the world problematique is going to take more issue management of more issues than fits in one monkey brain. And the world problematique is that set of interconnected problems that are displaying almost immune system style protection of one another from solution, right? So the corporate personhood, that's one of the problems, okay? And money in politics, and the two-party system, and lobbyists, paid lobbyists, and the what is it, the election commission deciding who gets to even be in the debates, and it's the debate commission deciding who gets to have the audience of the American people to even be able to hear them in debate, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things are all, none of them is fixable on its own, not by us monkeys in pants without tool support for our collaborative cognition. Okay, and so in this new modality, we curate. Do you see how this little graph over here is the superposition of all of these individual little private graphs, subgraphs? It contains the total. Okay, and so there's contradiction. There's going to be lies. There's going to be fever dreams, there's going to be misunderstandings, all of those things in the merged mental model, because those are in our heads, right? And we're going to be expressing those. But it's only by putting them in a shared address space and making them addressable so that any one of those assertions or entities can be subjected to the evolutionary pressure of, in effect, academic quality discourse, that we'll be able to tame, that we have a hope of being able to tame this monster. Okay, so we need evidence-based workflows for figuring out what's true, and we need values-based workflows to figure out what's good. Okay, and we need tooling to support us in being able to perform both of these processes at societal scale. Over.
I think the curation process is a big problem, how to do that. Um, Now, I could see an architecture for this where you have decentralized graph structures and decentralized apps, and people can share. But yeah, the curation and the reasoning behind it, maybe you need topic maps or whatever Marc Antoine is doing. Yeah, go ahead.
Mark and Jack and I are in close conversation, trying to trying to understand one another's language,
Yep.
so that we can, so that
Yeah,
not
you're the three people on this chart, right?
yeah, right, so that not only can we understand one another, but so that we can start speaking in concert and using the same vocabulary and understanding where it is that we're saying something novel, okay,
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying something, in a different way and disagreeing about how to say it, right? So there's extremely close conjunction. We don't know yet what we disagree about. It could be that basically we keep on saying, Jack's phrase is, I violently agree with that. We keep on violently agreeing with one another when we can manage to understand one another. Now, I think there's still some subtle differences about I believe that it's the case that all of the different collaborative modalities that we engage in, like the society library and debate map uh, and a couple of mine, the Ponder workflow um, uh, and others are all going to be basically different facets, different bidirectional modalities. I say bidirectional UX modalities because they are in effect interactive infographics where they present information and they also permit us to express ourselves into the merged mental model through direct interaction with the graphic entities. So
Yeah, I view those as like decentralized apps that would connect to a common data structure that's federated.
I, we're in so close to perfect agreement. I would niggle with apps, and I would niggle with yes,
Yeah, it's just the
yes.
word right now. Yeah,
Well,
it's whatever it becomes. Yeah.
we almost have to move beyond the old words because there's baggage associated with the old
Oh
words. There's
yeah,
meaning
right.
associated with the old words that isn't accurate about the new thing that we need.
Right,
So,
but
so
the D-Web
yeah,
community still thinks of it as an app. That's
exactly. I'm starting to use the term potency
okay.
instead, because what potency means is that it's a potency is an amalgamation of multiple visualization technologies, basically controllers in the MVC modality.
Mhm.
Okay, in effect, an amalgamation of multiple controllers that are all grounded in an ontologically defined class structure. So ontologies are underlying all of this. Basically, there's a new, I'm introducing a new programming methodology. It's post ER entity relationship. It's post OOP, because what it is COP, knowledge-oriented programming, or SOP, semantic-oriented programming, or something, or NOP, noospheric-oriented programming, where
Right.
it's it's after OOP in
Yeah.
being the superset, which is for modeling purposes ontological work. So have ontologies replace the modeling component, the structural aspect of OOP, and have in effect the method bodies live in knowledge too, so that the behavior aspect of OOP is in noospheric oriented programming. It's in the knowledge base too, so that we've got the capabilities of OOP blended with the new superpowers of 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 um, of ontological systems, where one of the great wins of ontologies is that they can evolve. Another is that they can interdigitate and interoperate in a decentralized way. Okay, and so
Yep.
those are not capabilities of OOP. Okay.
Now, Sam, do you think like an underlying datomic or data log structure can support this flexible knowledge environment going forward? If we all agree on entity attribute value and, and linking them all the way datomic does.
The answer is a clear yes, much better than relational models could potentially even hope to. Relational models, and I would argue object models, are too static.
Yeah, you could derive any
So
graph, anything you want from the EAV with
I
the
should be able to
timestamp.
define a new attribute at any time and attach it to an existing entity
Right.
without having to change, my entire schema and go through all of
Correct.
that stupid computational
Right.
cost.
Correct. The problem with ER was that it was not designed for distributedness and federation, right? So when you make a
Because
schema,
it was state fucked up, okay?
Yeah.
It
Right.
always had to deal with different state. If you deal with immutable models, then it parallelizes quite easily.
Yep.
well,
If you have the right
so
support.
so
Yeah.
if you make a person database and call your phone number column phone number, and I call it mobile or contact or PH or whatever, right? Then your database and my database are very difficult to merge, right? We humans need to laboriously define a mapping, right? Over.
Okay, I want to make sure that Kayla is still plugged in because this is probably
Sorry,
very
Kayla.
boring for Kayla. But if you like, I can answer that question.
Go ahead and answer that
What was the
question,
question?
Sam.
What, Kayla?
Go ahead.
What was the question?
I just didn't want Kayla to get, so bored and irritated that she thought we were just, again, talking past her.
I
Well, let me take a
apologize,
shot at,
Kayla. I apologize. What do you think the implicit question is, or should we have Kayla voice the question?
Are you asking me if it's boring? Is that what you're asking me, Sam?
yes, is it so
It,
boring that you already checked out?
yeah, I'm a little checked out, and it's not. Please don't take it personal because it's uh, my mental capacity right now is not in a position where I can fully listen to that. But I am, partially
Hey,
listening to see
Kayla,
if
it's
I could
not
just
you.
check in.
Even among, it's not you. It's not you. Okay, it's not
That's
you.
not you.
Even among the three of us, there's a lot to disambiguate with what I'm about to say in response to Shawn. Okay, and that is, um, I a very underappreciated problem of intelligence, way sooner than recognition, way sooner than meaning. You know, you have to solve it before any of that actually makes any sense whatsoever. Is Eric? Do you remember what I'm going to rant on? Or Shawn, do you have a guess?
I'm not sure. Just go ahead.
I'm not sure. Just
Okay,
run for it.
Fundamental to intelligence is first recognition. In other words, is this something I've already seen? Have I already named this? Do I know anything about it? Do I know anything about anything similar to it? That is the recognition problem. And so that's why I have always said that the whole semantic web business was too brittle because it can't deal with PH versus PHONE versus PN versus, P underscore N versus, all of that crap. Okay? Because anything that attempts to codify with fixed field types and attributes, okay, is too brittle. That's another reason I don't like static typing. Static typing is for easy problems. Hard problems, you're not going to be able to map onto static typing frameworks. Now, arguably, most of the world is not working on hard problems. That's why they love static typing. Okay. But people are inherently working on things that are not that well staticized, static compiled. I'm sorry, most people would not be able to disambiguate what I was just about to say. So, if you're able to have some stab at doing recognition, then you have a chance at intelligence. But if you actually do not recognize that that recognition comes first, then you're going to be building more and more and more complexity into the later stages of intelligence.
So Sam,
And that is my thesis.
so here's a problem with the multi-party convo with the arity greater than two. I needed to interrupt you immediately. What the hell are you talking about? What is recognition? Like I don't understand what you mean by recognition. And I don't understand why the word intelligence got dragged into this. Okay. The reason Kayla wasn't understanding me, wasn't understanding us, didn't have anything to do with intelligence. It had to do with I was using nerd language and I was I was trying to carry some technical points that are in effect almost impossible to fling over the transom to somebody who isn't a techie because there's like we would need an hour of tutorial to establish the terminology, right? At least I've taught that course, right? So it was it's vocabulary, it's conceptual.
See, vocabulary is
Yeah,
naming things, which means that you
yeah,
think you've seen it before. And that is the recognition problem.
Hey, Shawn.
yeah.
Um, I was looking at like that line graph, and then I was looking at person one, person two, person three, and
Yeah.
I would love to know. And this is not an answer for a question for you guys, but just in general, I would love to know like what I would be typed as a person who learns by visual, a person who learns and listens by like reading. And it's only because I'm going to jump topic here. I really like what Eric was saying about Star Trek. And as you probably have all observed, I try very hard to learn about multiple things through just everyday interactions, even if it's just television. And what I found very fascinating and what you guys were kind of talking about is the mind is very, very fascinating and it's very complex. Any neuroscience, you know, doctor or whatever will tell you, even you guys know that it's very complex. And I was just, again, thinking about my dad, and currently he is in a very hallucinatory, is that even a word, state?
Totally.
He is hallucinating. However, he is aware of who is around him. And uh, it was fascinating sitting and watching him in the hospital go to a place where he is very familiar with. I didn't stop his hallucinations. I didn't say, hey, you're here. You're not like at home. Because seeing where his state of mind in almost gave me peace. And I was just thinking it probably gives him peace. He was cooking. He was a chef in the Navy. He was cooking. He loves cooking. But at the same time, when I was standing in front of him, he would see me from time to time and say, oh, hey, there you are. Like you're standing in a hole. What are you doing over there? Or, oh, can you hand me a spoon? He knew I had teenage kids. He knew, I was 50 years old. He knew where he was, but I was still in his coming in and out of his hallucinations. Now, the reason why I bring that up is I was pondering your mental model. If that's even, am I even saying, is that a mental model? Anyways,
Sure.
I was
Sure.
pondering it and I'm like, I love reading. I love looking, that's how you get me to listen is I can hyper focus when I am in a meditative state of mind of reading. I can also, I'm also a fantastic dancer. I have to say so myself. And dancing, learning how to dance is a form of meditation for me. Everything goes silent and I am hyper focused on that type of meditation. And so when I was looking at your mental model, it just really made me think of like, I wonder what I am. Am I all three of those? But at the same time, looking at my dad, I realized that I can actually, if I really wanted to, concentrate and just observe from afar what's happening. Of course, I'm related to him. There's a lot of history there. Of course, it's going to be fascinating and interesting. Of course, I'm going to see that he's referencing certain things. But your mental model just made me think of that. Over.
Well, yeah, I would say that I had a convo with Doug Breitbart yesterday, and he was telling me about a collaborator of his who um, is on the spectrum and is suggesting that yeah, well, that we need to move way past this whole medicalization of the notion of the spectrum and note that there's just this wild diversity of cognitive superpowers that are distributed across our population, and that in effect kind of trivial taxonomy of numbers, words, and images that's just kind of that's the bluntest, coarsest partitioning, right? That there's all sorts of things beyond the humane, the lyric, the musical, that this is that it's crazy, right? There's a vast number of them, and these ability gustatory, there's all sorts, but beyond just those senses, there's hundreds, and so these are all modalities that we can all participate to various degrees, right? And at different times, with respect to different subject matters, each of those is more or less an appropriate or preferenced, distinguished mode of interaction, right? So it's that we all need access to the color note organ of infinite perspectives, to facilitate our onboarding of the ideas that one another want to share. Over.
So it would be great if we could figure out how AI can do that curation to let everybody build their personal mental maps and to have the topic map that translates between them with AI support. And then, yeah, I think we're in the process of figuring out how to use AI at this point, and what we decide now is very important. So,
I would submit that there's a safe tool AI role here.
yeah.
And I can identify some specific modalities, places in this framework where we should be having AIs assisting us using what they're good at, okay, and trustworthy at, to support us. So yes, absolutely. One of them is in fact is in fact is in fact this business about seeing to it that at the time of expression into the merged mental model, as much disambiguation happens as possible at that initial moment of expression to
Yes,
maximally facilitate our interop, right? And then, of
and
course,
feedback and training.
there's the ongoing process of, of trying to meld, to map between, to translate, to, go beyond, to engage in the what is it called? Synthesis, toward bigger and bigger tents and higher and higher orders of unification between our understandings, right? So that at first there's the synchronous process of when you assert, it would be great to have AI tooling to assist us in asserting in as disambiguated a way as possible. And then also there's that later process of the asynchronous, non-real time, curatorial academic process of trying to figure out the successors to our current understandings that do a better job of spanning what we really understand over.
And by the way,
And
I really love your like nerdy tech stuff. I love that you pointed it out.
can you
I
say
just
that again? I
that
didn't
you're
understand.
when you were saying, yeah, the reason why she isn't understand or something, I'm probably gonna totally butcher it, is because I'm talking in nerd language.
It's not your fault. It's my fault. Right? It's
No,
my
but
fault, not yours.
I have to say, and Sam's heard this before. I love listening to you guys. I mean, you guys just, you know, Eric, when you're bringing up AI, it helped me tremendously. And the weird part is like you guys are like ahead of a lot of people. I've asked about that. I've asked my boss about that kid who unfortunately committed suicide
Right.
because of AI and stuff. And, she didn't know about it. A lot of people didn't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one tiny, probably not so good example of, the way you guys talk. I just love it. Sometimes I don't understand it, but when something comes up, it'll spark it in me. Or I was like, oh yeah, that's what they were talking about. So yeah, sometimes I might phase out with some of the nerd techie stuff. But I just like the beauty of listening to you guys and letting you guys rant from time to time is that eventually I'll pick it up. But most of the time I go to AI and sometimes ask questions over.
Thank you. I mean, looking at these screen shares, I'm feeling too much information, and unless I have a framework for digging into it, like maybe watching that YouTube video that you were playing, maybe then I would get a framework before I could even
Of course.
understand how to even go think about this. It seems there's some innovation here. I'm just not sure what. Like maybe the green little ovals are an innovation, a different protocol that you're designing. That's to be seen in the future. So,
Yeah, all I'm all I'm attempting to demonstrate is that there's an the thing that is being demoed here basically is just the Thinker Toys window manager
okay.
equivalent. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it makes
it's
sense.
all
Panels.
it
Yeah.
yeah, so it's almost as if it's a distributed OS for collaborative cognition because
Right.
because it strives to replace apps. Well, okay, with what? Well, with the kinds of with these with these visualizer
Right.
logics that let us curate our understandings directly into the merged mental model so that
Right.
our
But
work
you got to have
goes
to
into
think
a
about
shared
the
space.
audience. the audience who you would communicate with, like most people would have a problem with this level of detail, and we need to go through step by step of why they would use this and what. Yeah.
Of course, of course. I'm
Yep.
not, we don't have the social contract of me giving you a demo.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have that.
Good. Okay. Go ahead, Sam. Mentor. Yep. What of
I'm going to ask permission first because I'm going to try and answer one of Shawn's questions, which was, why did I bring up intelligence? Why did I bring up recognition? To me, and probably apparently only to me, it was a direct response to what Shawn had previously said about, hey, some schema has pH, some schema has phone, some schema has something else. I generalized that to the problem of reference. And the generalization of reference is recognition. So I probably did that too quickly. And
I'm
I
still
think that
struggling.
reference,
I'm still struggling, actually, in case you want to know. So
okay,
do you want me to ask so that I can understand? Or would you
sure.
prefer to? Right. So like this, it's at this level. It's at this level of handshake that human communication fails. Okay. And so
Yep.
you're gonna have to like give me one sentence, and I have to respond to that sentence because I need to get traction on what you mean. Those every single word that you used, and this isn't a complaint, is overloaded with multiple meanings, right? And so which meaning did you mean in that instance, right? So that's a fundamental flaw with natural language. Okay.
Correct.
And so that's why a
By the
shared
way,
address space is required for the disambiguation. So you want to start off with the first sentence again? I'm so sorry.
actually, philosophically, I would love to. Although today I'm supposed to perform at a art festival in not very long from now, so I do have kind of a hard cutoff. I would like to park this if you're still interested in doing it either tomorrow or some other day. But I just realized we're already two past the hour, and I have to go meet somebody so that we can actually carpool together to go to this performance. It's a 90-minute performance, by the way. This is the longest gig we've ever done. Previously, I've done three or four or five before, but they've each been about 20 or 30 minutes. So now we've got something that I'm actually gonna get, holy smokes, I'm actually gonna
okay.
get paid for this one,
Woo!
believe it or not.
Wonderful.
Play.
Not
All
very much,
right.
okay? Not very much, but it's
But
actually
still.
formally agreed upon, you know.
What do you play, Sam?
I play violin, which is what I'm gonna do today. And decades ago, I used to direct a children's string orchestra, 10 to 12 to 13-year-olds. And I used to help them with chamber music and string quartet coaching. And I used to direct an actual orchestra Sundays in Palo Alto at Jordan Middle School out on the grass in the amphitheater. And there we did some serious music. We did Mozart, Grieg, Corelli, Mahler, um, pretty cool stuff. So anyway, that's 30 seconds, but I have to go warm up my fingers and then go meet Linda. It's Linda who plays flute and accordion, Lisa, her sister, who is the vocalist, and Lisa's partner, Ian, who is a guitarist. So it's going to be that eclectic combination of instruments. We're
Man.
That's
doing a
so
mix of.
cool.
Wonderful.
Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing
So
about
I
that.
apologize, Shawn. This is not because of lack of interest. This is a cool, serious interest of mine, okay? But I just remembered I have to go somewhere and go perform, and then I'm really hoping we get a chance to do this tomorrow, okay?
Kayla,
Okay.
Eric, I would love to have individual mind melds with you guys so we can actually get to know one another deeply and be able to understand one another's language.
Mhm.
So,
I'll leave the
Yeah.
recording going as long as you guys like, okay?
oh, okay. Oh, okay. There you go. Good, good. I don't know.
I mean, I can stay a little bit.
I'm not. This isn't the forum for that.
Yeah.
This isn't the forum.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so in effect, find the smurp.com/meet link, set up a time, and we can you know have
Yeah.
our own conversation, right? That that where we can understand one another.
Yep. Just a comment, what Sam just talked about musicians, there's a great model of how do you get people on the same page, common language, common nuances of performance, and getting the kids to learn how to play together. That's a big challenge.
It really
Hmm.
is.
I think there's a lot we could learn from that.
Well, and something really interesting about it is or a connection is to is there's the director, right? And the director, that sociotechnical process is there's a director, he's got a baton, a conductor rather. There's a baton, like it's a
But see, with my band, I'm performing along with the band, and I could improvise as the director as well. So that's a challenge, but it works.
well, and that's a different game, right?
Yep.
The jazz improv. Is it jazz or what's your
No, it's klezmer, but you
oh,
can't just read the notes. You have to think about how it fits into what the music is trying to express. You're playing around with different tricks to express that.
I'm so impressed. Klezmer blows my mind. It's some of
Hmm.
my favorite work music. It is phenomenal. God,
Yeah,
it's so cool.
the range of emotions that you're trying to express with that. Yeah, it's cool. All right. Yeah, so yeah, we'll try. I'll be back tomorrow, and we could
Yep.
see where we
Me
go.
too. Yeah.
Great.
Take
Thank you,
care, you
guys.
guys.
Yeah, have a good afternoon.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.